We are out here in Ventnor on the corner of Oxford and Fulton, and that's behind me here. I don't know if you can see it way in the distance. It says slow, no wake, and we're trying not to make a wait out here with this water. We have Tropical Storm Fay that is closing in on what likely is going to be a landfall here in South Jersey. It was just about 30 miles south of Cape May, just around 12 o'clock here. So figure maybe 25 miles south of Cape May. Now, it's going to make some kind of landfall this afternoon or evening, and just by looking at the satellite, it looks like it's going to be somewhere maybe around Sea Isle City up the Brigantine, which would put Ventnor here in that risk. But regardless, we are still talking about lots of water here. If we can have Molly, who is graciously holding the camera for us here, take a look. It's over the curb, so you're dealing with about 5-6 inches of water on the road. Now, granted, it's not everywhere. If Molly turns to, which would be her left, you can see that once you go a little bit elevated, it's dry. But there are areas like this where you're not driving through this, and if you are, you really shouldn't. You want to turn around, don't drown anytime you see flooded waters, because you just don't know how deep this is. Way in the distance over here, we do have cones blocking off the street, but we have seen a lot of flooding here in South Jersey today. There's been videos in Stone Harbors that we have posted, videos in Summers Point that we have talked about as well. And in addition to that, Avalon too. Now, the worst of the rain is over. It's dry here, and actually right before we did this video, we had a little bit of sunshine too. Temperatures are pretty warm. You know, usually when we're out here talking about coastal flooding, it's during the winter months, but this isn't coastal flooding. This is water from the rain, and we will continue to have that as we go forward in time. Now, one thing that's going to kind of throw a curveball with this is the high tide. It's coming just in about a half hour, between 1 to 2 p.m. Now, we're not expecting to get into flood stage from the coastal flooding, so that's good. But on the other hand, you saw some higher water, and that's going to help back up some of the sewer systems and really help keep this water around for, I think, the next 2 hours or so here in South Jersey. We'll see if they get by. It says no wake over here, but you guys are good.
Hardly awake at all.
That's hardly awake at all. We'll see how far they do get. Looks like they're going to try to make it all the way. But the flooding is the biggest concern with this. It's been breezy here, but it's not windy. We've seen worse before. We saw worse on Monday with the thunderstorms that came through. So this is really a flooding threat here. You know, as we're going and looking down the street again, we do have a good amount of water, enough to even do a little bit of boogie boarding here. We have 2 kids that are taking in the water. You don't have to go, even if you live on Ventnor, you know, sometimes it's a walk to the beach. You don't have to go that far. You just stay right here, and you can enjoy the water here. Of course, we want to make sure we're as flood-free as possible in South Jersey, just having a little bit of fun. The storm has maximum sustained winds of 60 miles an hour. It's about 25 miles south of Cape May right now. It's moving north at about 12 miles an hour. So if you do the math, you're talking about a landfall sometime between about 2 to 3 o'clock. That 12 miles an hour was at the 11 a.m. update. So around 2 o'clock or so, maybe it holds on till 3. We do get some kind of landfall here in South Jersey. This would be our 10th landfalling tropical storm or hurricane since 1900. And it would be our first landfalling tropical system since Irene that we had in 2011. This one much less severe than Irene, where we did have evacuations in Atlantic City. This one is kind of just coming and going. You can think of it like a nor'easter, just with a little bit more rain. We've talked widespread 3 to 4 inch amounts in Cape May County. Here in Atlantic County, between 2 to 3 inches of rain. And those totals will only increase in places like Bridgeton or places like Philadelphia, even getting into Ocean County as they're seeing the heaviest rain now. Mo, do we have any questions from people? Looks like maybe a couple.
We didn't have any questions from people yet, Joe. Yep. We have about 200 people watching. But I had a question for you.
Tell me, Molly.
I deal with flooding like this.
Yeah.
And you know, when it's coastal flooding, we worry about that brackish water on our cars.
Yeah.
But this is rainwater.
Yeah.
So is it still...
Yeah.
You're not a car expert, Joe. You're a meteorologist. I'm sorry. I don't mean to have you practice medicine.
I drive a Chevy.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, so this is fresh water. So all this flooding here, that's freshwater flooding. That's unusual, right? So when we're talking about, you know, Ventnor, and we're talking flooding, we're talking about the brackish salt water, the water that's coming from the bay towards the, you know, land here. This is fresh water. So will it corrode your car? I would say probably not. but it's still not a good idea to have your car here because you'll still get some kind of water damage, right? It might not be the salt water that's doing it, but you still get some water damage from this. And again, I don't have a ruler on me, but I can kind of just stick my hand in. You know, we're talking up to my wrist, you know, with water. So yeah, maybe, I don't know. What do you think, Molly? 6, 7 inches maybe? So a couple inches of water here. Let's see if we can kind of come down a little bit.
Yeah, let's explore it a little bit,
we have boots on, so we're good for a little bit.
Yeah, we're wearing boots.
We're wearing boots. I got a suit. I got a shirt and tie on, but we're wearing boots. I think, can we get that no weight over there?
I think we should.
Yeah.
I mean, we're here.
We are
Might
here.
as well, Joe.
And Molly, you know, you live here, so you know, like you said before. So, what time did you start to see the floodwaters come here in Ventnor?
Yeah, Joe, this morning, I actually did not move my car because I thought I was going to have enough time. And then when the rain really came in around right before 9:30, I moved my car up a few blocks because the water just started getting crazy. Yeah, and that's the thing with this, you know, rain flooding, right? It's different. And, you know, we talk all the time about flooding. You know, it's different when I tell you, hey, you know, high tides at 1:30 this afternoon, move your cars. You know, you can plan for that. This kind of rain, you know, you just don't know when the flooding is going to start. Even though the rain is fairly uniform, you know, you still know it's going to start. But, you know, a lot of water here in Ventnor. I mean, I would say maybe we're talking about a foot in the middle of that intersection. Again, it's not everywhere here in Ventnor, but it is in spots. And actually, I talked to the, we'll go down south of town to Margate, the OEM coordinator, Chuck LeBar, and I texted him. I said, hey, how's it going in Margate? He said, bad, I'll call you later. And then he actually followed up and saying it sounded like moderate flood stage. Now he's comparing it to coastal flooding. Moderate flood stage, though, you know, if we talk about our coastal flooding and we parlay this into our freshwater flooding, that's when you start to see some impacts to homes and businesses where the water, you know, is not only here on the sidewalk, but it can start getting up to the house. Now, we don't have that here, so that's good. But we do have high tide coming at about 1:30 this afternoon, between 1 and 2 for everywhere here along the Atlantic shoreline and bays. So what you see is probably what you get for the next 1 to 2 hours or so. And then we'll start to recede because the majority of the rain has passed. The heaviest rain now is in places like Hamilton, places like Vineland, places like Bridgeton. You know, it's moving away from the immediate shoreline and then points just west out to the parkway. So do you think we're going to have flooding concerns this evening and tomorrow morning?
You know, we are talking about a round of coastal flooding early tomorrow morning, around the 2 a.m. hour, just minor flood stage. In fact, there might even be worse flooding this afternoon than what we see overnight. And I definitely think that not all places will see the coastal flooding. And again, you know, just for the people who are tuning in, and appreciate everybody tuning in here. We know you have other choices for weather. We appreciate your staying here with us. Tropical Storm Fay has sustained winds, maximum sustained winds of 60 miles an hour. It's moving north at 12 miles an hour. And this was at the 11 a.m. update. And at the 11 a.m. update, it was about 30 miles south of Cape May. So if you do the math, you're kind of putting it at about 2 p.m. landfall time. I think it's going to stay Sea Isle to Brigantine, which would put us here for the eye coming over. The winds have picked up, but they're not strong. It's just a breeze that's right here now. You can kind of hear the power lines whistling. I don't know if you can get that, you know, through the audio, but the power lines are whistling a little bit here. So, talked to one resident here in Ventnor that's actually behind us. You know, he said, you know, you get oceanfront property every once in a while. Unfortunately, this wasn't even from the coastal flooding, and this is what we're talking about, and this is what happens in some of these low-lying areas.
Fay is still a tropical storm, right?
It is, yeah.
Can you maybe explain for our watchers and our readers what the difference is between that and a hurricane?
Yeah, so it's a matter of wind speed. When you're talking about tropical systems, you have your tropical depression, which is not named. Those are wind speeds below 39 miles an hour. Then you have your tropical storm with maximum sustained winds between 39 and 74 miles an hour, and that's where we are now. Fay has maximum sustained winds of 60. Hurricanes anything above 74. Now, Sandy, we'll just kind of talk about Sandy for a little bit. It made landfall as a post-tropical cyclone, meaning it lost some of its tropical characteristics, but still, you know, you were talking about hurricane strength, the maximum sustained winds, you know, when it did make landfall. And we had gusts in the 90s with Sandy. This is way, way less significant than Sandy. This is pretty much a nor'easter with a name attached to it, and it's a warm core system. And that's something I should say too. You know, we talk about what's the difference between a nor'easter and a tropical storm. when you get down to the meteorology of it, it's that a tropical storm is a warm core system, and a nor'easter is a cold core system. And you know, that's why a lot of times you see your nor'easters during the winter months, to make a long story short about that.
No, perfect, Joe. And then just one last thing, I know you talked about this earlier, but Fay has, you know, it has opportunity to be historic, right?
Yeah.
So could you explain to our watchers why, you know, that's a thing?
Yeah, so since 1900, there have been 9 hurricanes or tropical storms that have made landfall in New Jersey, in the region. And this would be number 10 if it did. So, you know, we don't get landfalling systems that often. But not only that, you know, Fay is part of this record, on pace for record-breaking hurricane season. You know, 2005 was the strongest season, the most active season, with 25, I believe, named storms. That was the one with Katrina. This one's on pace. We had our first F storm of the season, and that was during, or we had our first F storm of the season with Fay, the earliest we've ever had an F storm here. But that's why it's historic, you know, for 2 reasons. It's not historic in the storm, don't get me wrong. This is really not a big deal, but just in history, you know, and have a place. All right, let's see if we can get out. I'm gonna try to see if we can scooch out a little bit onto the lawn a little bit here. I don't want to go too deep, but again, you know, look at the water. No wakes, so that's good. You know, just like that sign said. But we're here on the corner of Oxford and Fulton Avenue here in Ventnor, and this is what we're seeing. It's not everywhere, but we're seeing this in spots. Any other questions, Molly?
No questions right now. Let's wrap it up, Joe.
Yep.
What's your plan for the rest of the day covering the storm?
Yeah, so, you know, we have full updates. Molly and I, pressafac.com. We have live updates on this. We're talking about road closures. We're talking about just updates by the National Hurricane Center. We'll talk about when it makes landfall. I'm going to take a look at the satellite right after we're done, and I'm going to take a look. I might try to make a drive around to where the center of the storm goes, and try to see it come ashore. That would be a cool moment, and you know, this is a relatively low impact storm, so I don't always advocate for going out in the middle of a storm, but you know, we're talking about just a little bit of a breeze, a little bit of coastal flooding. I think you know, many people can you know, take in some of the beauty of this storm, and we don't have to thankfully worry about too much damages. There are areas I know that have significant flooding, but for the most part here in South Jersey, we have been relatively okay. So we'll wrap it up here. Thank you again, everybody, for watching. We'll have more updates for you. We have a full video when I was back at the green screen with the suit and everything, talking about what to expect for the rest of the day. And appreciate you guys, everybody, for tuning in.